And now broadcasting from the EFX Sports studio, it's ESPN EFX Sports Radio with Dr. Jeff Golini.
Well, welcome to EFX Sports Radio. My name is Dr. Jeff Golini with my co-host, Mr. Brian Andrews.
Yes, I'm ready to lay down the digital 411.
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful day here in sunny Billings, Montana. How about your neck of the woods?
You know, it's actually sunny here, too. It's a little crisp. You can definitely tell fall's rolling in, but it's a beautiful day.
And speaking of a beautiful day, that's the best time to get up early and hit the gym for a little bit of weight training.
Weight training, that's an awesome topic.
Man, you know what? I was thinking that's a big category. You know, weight training means so many things to different people. I thought, man, if we're going to talk about weight training, we probably should first define, what is weight training?
Yes, absolutely. And especially, with the audience we have, who are athletes or who want to be athletes or a better athlete, weight training, it's fun. It was one of those things, back in the 50s or so, it was kind of like taboo. You didn't do it because you would get too big or your muscle range, your range of motion would really be decreased. But when we're talking about weight training, we're talking about specifically training your body really for one or both reasons, to get stronger or to change your appearance.
Yeah, I used to always hear, you're going to get muscle bound and you won't be able to tie your shoes.
Muscle bound.
And then when you quit lifting, all that muscle is going to turn to fat. For the record, it is impossible for muscle to convert to fat.
Yeah, there are two completely different types of tissue.
Yeah, but that's how people used to think, and I think people still think that way a little bit, But yeah, there's a lot of different type of weight training. When you mention weight training to me, the first thing that comes to my mind is, a regimen, going into the gym and utilizing weight training to either, build one's body or to prepare one for sport. But boy, this day and age, there's so many different categories that have popped up. I mean, how many have you seen out there?
I can throw a rock in 10 different directions and hit 10 different gyms. It's interesting how it used to just be kind of the mainstream, bodybuilding, what people would perceive that to be. Then it was more, hey, I want to get in shape. But now, because of all the different types of sports, people have taken, think about how many ways can you lift a weight? How many bench presses can you do? So there's been a lot of, reinventing, so to speak. In good ways. But isn't it interesting to see how diverse it's come? It's kind of like, say in the supplement industry, how many types of protein are there? At the end of the day, it's protein.
Yeah, I remember back when I was in high school, we used to have what we called circuit training, where the coach would set up all these stations, and if there weren't enough weights or military presses open, then in that station you'd jump rope or push-ups or do something, jumping jacks. And, you have a stopwatch and be 60 seconds, okay, lift. And then you do that lift for 60 seconds and then change. And then, you change. And they used to call that circuit training. And I think that is one of kind of the new phenomena with all this CrossFit. And, there's 100 different names, kettlebell, But it's kind of interesting because I've seen a lot of people out here get hurt getting into that type of training.
Well, and I know, again, I'm not an expert on that particular thing, but from what I do know, the idea is that you a lot of it is trained in groups, and similar to your circuit training you talked about, you're all doing kind of the same movements, trying to push to that next level, which, hey, I'm glad for anyone to do, honestly, any type of exercise. The problem I see is that you're mixing groups of people that are very experienced with people who are, say, newbies, and the type of lifting is ballistic, meaning it's not like a controlled, very strict form, and it's so easy to get injured, especially when you're new and your body is just not used to that type of movement.
Oh, absolutely. The adrenaline gets flowing, and you want to keep up with, the next guy or gal. But, my recommendation for weight training is, you got to be safe and you got to know what you're doing. Do not just jump into anything. Don't hire a personal trainer that hasn't properly instructed you. Don't jump in one. I call them CrossFit. There's a kabillion names for, everybody's different class. But again, it's, that circuit training. Just don't jump into a class. You need to learn how to stretch and to feel your body before doing these type of exercises. And then make sure you go at your pace. Don't try to jump into a brand new weight training program and try to keep up with someone who's been doing it for, 3-4 years.
Oh, absolutely. It all comes over time. It's funny. Hindsight's 2020. The old thing, if I could go back in time 20 years type of thing, just knowing again what I know now, if I could tell myself back then, think long term, in other words, don't think about the now and I got to be there right now and I got to be huge and strong. Wow. I mean, just little aches and pains that I have, say now, being in my mid 40s, that I know come from not training properly in certain movements, or, the little things that you felt back then, you just pushed through it. You didn't care because your body was young and it would bounce back so quickly. Now it's kind of like, I should rethink this a little bit and think if I could think longevity.
Absolutely. And I think you got to be smart about weight training. And that's what we're talking about, is you got to realize that, bodybuilders are probably the smartest weight trainers of all. That's why bodybuilders can build their physiques to such outrageous proportions. Other athletes haven't quite figured out sometimes that you got to rest. You can't do a CrossFit class every single day. You are bombarding your body. You are going to tear something. It's not natural. I always recommend that if you're going to, put together your weightlifting regimen, kind of a rule of thumb is do upper body and lower body 2 days a week. Not legs every day or bench presses every day. You got to kind of break that out so that there's at least a 1 to 2 day rest in between those body parts.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that. I'm a huge proponent of recovery, which to me, that is the secret to all of this. People talk about taking anabolic steroids and all this stuff. Yeah, they help you grow, but what they're really doing is help you recover at an accelerated rate. So in other words, if there was no problem or, there was an overtraining and all this kind of stuff, you could train 10, 12 hours a day and you would be the biggest person on the planet, but you've got to recover. In other words, you're digging a hole. Now you got to fill that hole back in to build a mountain on top of it.
Oh, yeah. I remember when we were in high school, we'd go into the gym, weight room after school, like at 3 o'clock, and we'd lift sometimes till 7, 8 o'clock at night. I got no idea what we were doing for 6 hours, man.
You blow your shoulders out.
I don't know, And I see a lot of guys that just spend, hours and hours. And it's like, man, the first thing I learned is that, you got to do less. If you're training intense and you have your workout planned, you should be able to get in and get out. That's one of the things that the CrossFit type classes teach is, it's a short period of time. Someone is telling you what to do. The bad thing, like I said, is they're doing it too often, and there's not enough, stretching and preparation. It's just, okay, jump in. And I see, people from kids to, grandmas and grandpas in the same class. So be careful on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of with you. In my experience, I've come to the point of believing that less is more, and that's with most things in life.
Right.
You don't. Why do you need to train 3 hours a day? You're not going to get there, especially if you don't have that, assistance.
Yeah.
So you're not going to recover from that. That's a big problem, and we've all done it. You flip open one of the latest, muscle magazines. You see this guy just looks like a Greek god or a Superman, and I go, wow, how does he train? I want to copy what he's doing.
Yeah.
That is an accelerated workout. You cannot do that.
No, you couldn't even keep up with me, half of the kids at my gym. And it's only because they don't know what they're doing. But
yeah, exactly.
Is weightlifting safe? If you know what you're doing, it's like anything. If you are properly skilled, you know how to properly perform those exercises, weight training is safe. Where it becomes dangerous is where it's uncontrolled. You're swinging, you're trying to handle way too much weight. And then too many people that I see throughout the country have abandoned, things like weightlifting belts and knee wraps. Ridiculous. Some conceived notion that you won't build your lower erectors in your back. Well, go look at one of my pictures from when I bodybuilded. That was probably one of my biggest parts, and I would not even do calves or forearms without a weightlifting belt.
Wow. That, like you said, that's taboo today, man. That people would be looking at you and laughing, but then again, they'd see you're 3 times their size. So you got to think, wait a minute, maybe there's something to this.
Well, it's all about preventive. If you want to prolong your lifting days, you gotta prevent injuries. Tools like weightlifting belts and knee wraps and wrist wraps, are all about keeping you safe. And that whole thing, no pain, no gain. Again, you got to be careful. Pain means something isn't going right.
Yeah, there's a good pain and a bad pain, which is, actually it's time to go to break. So let's pick up on that, pain coupled with ego and pride.
everybody. I'm Billy Gordon. I'm one of the coaches for the Heights Wrestling Club. I just wanted to take a minute and talk to you about EFX Sports and what their products have done for me and my wrestlers and the athletes that I lead. 6 months ago, I got introduced to EFX Sports, and I immediately started using them myself. The results have been nothing short of amazing. My body fat and weight have come down drastically. My strength has increased. If you get the opportunity, I highly recommend you give it a shot.
This is Dr. Jeff Golini of All American Pharmaceutical. I'm sure you've been seeing our national brand EFX Sports featuring carbolin and crealkaline all around the state lately. Our supplements are formulated for pros to high schoolers to just the average gym goer and are all about improving your game. You can find EFX Sports in Billings at Yellowstone Fitness, Lucky's, Bonanza's Health Food, Granite Fitness, and GNC, just to mention a few.
Do you know how to properly use carbohydrates to ignite your performance in the field and in the gym? You will now, thanks to this free book by EFX Sports. The Carb User's Guide for Maximum Performance reveals why omitting carbohydrates from your diet can totally crush your gains. Ever wonder how many grams you need for your specific sport? Not anymore. We give you the critical number you need to dominate your competition. You'll even discover the super carb that's taking the athletic world by storm. You must try it to believe it. Go to getcarbolin.com/carb guide today and get your copy absolutely free. Once again, it's GETKARBOLYN.com/CARBGUIDE.
Well, welcome back to EFX Sports Radio. We're talking about weight training today.
Absolutely. What an awesome subject. One of my favorite things.
Yeah, it's kind of like eating breakfast. I mean, I couldn't imagine, not going to the gym. I mean, relieve stress, you feel good, and obviously as an athlete, that's where you prepare your body for battle.
Absolutely. And right before we went to break, we were talking about injuries again, that type of thing. The reason why we harp on it so much is because we've all been there. I mean, I've had shoulder issues that I've had to train with on and off for years. This, back problems, things that have happened that, you got to decide, am I done or am I going to push through it? And I just, that old saying, pride cometh before the fall. Look, if you, it's all based on your beating yourself. In other words, beating your own personal I'm trying to say your personal best. Don't worry about what another guy can do. I mean, I've seen a guy bench 600 pounds. I'll never do that in my lifetime, even with all the drugs on the planet. But if I could say bench 3 and then get to 315 or 350, that's fantastic for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, talking about pain, there's a difference between, doing a squatting and, you get to your 10th or 11th rep and you feel that lactic acid burn. That's something that you want to push through because that is what happens in the fourth quarter. That's what happens in the last mile of the race. You got to push through that. We're talking about, a shoulder pain, some pull. That's what you have to be careful. Your body's saying, hey, first of all, something isn't going right, or maybe you get hurt. And if you continue on, you're going to be worse. And then you're going to end up having to take a whole lot of time off. Yeah,
exactly. Again, when we talk about no pain, no gain, we're strictly talking about your muscles burning, your body, and you're trying to say, no, I'm done, and your mind saying, we're going to do another rep or whatever, pushing through that. Not, hey, you've got a pretty bad injury or you're teetering on really getting hurt and you do it anyway. That's just foolish.
Another question I hear a lot, especially from females, is weight training safe for women? And I think
well, and coupled onto that, it's I don't want to do that. I want to look like those girls in those magazines. I don't want to get too big.
Oh man, if I had a quarter for every time I heard that,
Absolutely. And my answer to that is, I tell you what, I challenge you right now to get too big.
Yeah,
you do that, I will personally write you a check for $10,000. I want to see you get too big.
I always say it's impossible. You're never going to get that big, even if you try.
Exactly.
But you have to educate. That depending on the type of training. This is where, again, education, knowing what you're trying to accomplish, you've got to do some research and figure out what is your sport. If you just want to look good and be healthy, well, then you train a certain way. If you're going to play football, basketball, volleyball, you run track, basketball. I mean, different types of weight programs are for those type of sports. Obviously, bodybuilders, their body is their playing field, so they have to get big. Certain football players need to hold more muscle because, again, that's part of the sport. But you don't want to be a long-distance runner and weigh in 350 pounds. I mean, that's where, the diet and what you eat and all that comes into play. It's not necessarily the weight training that is going to just put on pounds and pounds of muscle.
Well, sure. And, talking about women, I mean, a lot of girls say, I want to have this like shapely, sexy physique, that type of thing. But it's like, I can tell you right now, it's not going to come from jogging or running on a treadmill. I mean, it really is going to come from changing the shape and proportion of your muscle. So that's why you want to weight train. There's nothing that can touch that you can come close.
Yeah, let me bust a myth here, too.
Bust away.
Here's a busted myth. When you folks see some guy or girl either on bodybuilding.com or in a magazine or something, and they've got that six-pack look and they're just all cut up, they do not look like that all the time.
No.
Do not be deceived by Hollywood and the model. That is not how they look. They look like that the day of the picture, the day of the contest, one day a year. So you got to be realistic with your goals also. It's great to want to achieve, that six-pack look, but keep in mind, you can't. It's unhealthy to be that lean all the time. You can have a six-pack, but it isn't going to be, veined out and ripped and all that kind of stuff.
No. That is literally a snapshot in time. They hold that, and then within a week, they probably gain 10 pounds and smoothed out to a degree. Some people obviously are genetically leaner than others, but that is all for a very temporary period of time. I've literally seen IFBB pro bodybuilders in what they call the off season with, guts that hang over their belt.
Which that isn't very healthy either. So what about kids? What do you think about kids lifting weights?
Kids, I think it's kind of a case-by-case scenario. I think in general, when you're really young, it's best to do body weight type of stuff. Just to be in shape, pull-ups, push-ups, free, stand there and squat down and up, burpees, that type of stuff, just to be active and get your musculature. But even some very lightweight training, I don't think is going to hurt. But maybe once you hit in your early teens, your growth plates are starting to really get formed. That's when you can start actually putting on, to me, I think, using actual weights.
Yeah, and I think, I don't think there's anything wrong with young kids lifting or, doing those core type exercises, push-ups.
Correct.
Again, it's all about make sure that, your kids are educated. Find someone at the gym or someone contact us, to find out what should they do, and again, it's all about learning how to properly lift weights because it is important, for most any type of sport.
Well, and again, it all depends on the sport you're in. A guy who's training for football versus track and field, tennis, golf, every one of these sports can benefit in some way from strength training. The key is getting with people that really know what they're doing. Don't waste your time. You can search the internet. Information is endless, but it's a lot of contradictory stuff. Go to an expert. Hire a trainer. Why not? It's worth the money you're going to pay to be pushed in the right direction than to waste time and spin your wheels.
Absolutely. As an athlete, everything you do is an investment. Whether your goal is only to play high school sports and you never want to go to college, maybe you want to be a professional. It's all about investing into your sport, your goal. And, it does require work and commitment. And weight training, is a necessity now. Just look at the NBA basketball players from 30 years ago. They were all bean poles. Look at them now. LeBron James, they all realize that weight training is important for every sport. Look at every Olympic athlete almost, who runs or jumps or something. They're all built because, weight training is important.
Oh, yeah, bobsledders. Those guys are some of the strongest squatters you'll ever see for their, their weight to size ratio. It's unbelievable how strong they are.
Now, here we go, man. If I only had one exercise and one exercise alone that I could do, guess what it would be?
I'm going to have to say it's probably squats.
Yes. Someone asked me that one time, if you could only do one exercise, what would you do? And I didn't even hesitate. I said squat. It's one of those things that, it's probably more important to build your legs, your core, than anything else. Doing curls, as we used to say, curls for the girls. I remember when we were playing football, our coach wouldn't let us do curls because he said it was, a pretty exercise. But again, the basics, are the things, especially for, strength sports, but also for basketball. Coach the other day said, I don't have my basketball players squat because I don't want them to be muscle bound in the legs. And I said, well, do you want them to jump higher? He goes, yeah. I said, well, then you need to be squatting. You got a bar on your back. You're holding the bar. It's requiring your back, your chest, your arms, everything. So that's my number one favorite exercise of all time.
Yeah, you know what? I think one of mine, too, is deadlifts, which is kind of like a hybrid squat, if you think about it. You just have the weight below you. But, boy, between squatting and deadlifting, you're going to cover 98% of your muscle mass being active.
And the other thing, too, remember that, you want to put resistance on the muscle, and doing one rep does absolutely nothing. If you were a power lifter,
strokes your ego.
Yeah, if you're a power lifter, and that's your competition, or when when we played football, that was how we measured, or became, part of the 300 club. It's fun to do that, but remember that, repetitions. I always say 10 is kind of the key goal to really strengthen that muscle for
to work that tissue.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I guess to bring this all together, weight training is incredibly important. I put it even above cardio. Yes, that's important for your heart, but I can't think of any other thing other than resistance exercise that's going to give people more benefit.
Absolutely. So if you want to go further in your sport, get on a weightlifting program.
Absolutely.
So, and find somebody who knows what they're doing. And again, that's what we do. So you can always go to allamericanpharmaceutical.com, look for Brian's email or look for mine. And, hey, if you want to know what type of training to do, send us an email. We love helping out. We don't charge anything for it. That's just kind of what we do, giving back.
Absolutely.
So anyhow, we thank you, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to ESPN EFX Sports Radio. Be sure to check out EFX Sports online at aaefx.com. And don't forget to check out EFX Sports supplements everywhere fitness products are sold.